Hello, everybody. Do you feel like no matter how hard you try, you can never break this sugar cycle? Well, I got you. My name is Dara Thomason, and I am the accidental weight loss coach. I help women learn how to get to the root of their weight loss struggles by going deep into our emotions. And when you can do that, you can actually free yourself from why counting calories and tracking steps and all those traditional methods don't work, because you're finally allowing yourself to really get to what's happening. And so it is my intention for this podcast to help you see that it's not that you're not smart enough. It's not that you aren't clever enough. It's not that you aren't good enough at tracking calories or tracking steps. It's that you haven't learned to regulate your body. All right. So this is episode 185, Strategies to Break the Sugar Cycle, the Quilters podcast. And I'm Dara Thomason. I'm a professional quilter who helps quilters or any other woman who resonates with what I'm saying create the kind of life that they want. Now, this episode is piggybacking off of 184, where we talked about addiction is the opposite of connection. And this morning I went on a walk and I was really thinking about those experiments and those studies that showed how addiction really happens. And we can have a mouse like they talked about in the last episode. And if you haven't watched it or listened to it, go and do that. Is amazing. But they took a mouse that had two water sources, one that had heroin and one that didn't. And 9 out of the 10 mice got addicted, or rats, to the heroin water. But then we had a Canadian scientist who thought, well, what about their environment? They were the only rats in the cage by themselves. What if we gave them a really nice environment? So he called it Rat City. And he put all sorts of activities and other rats. And even though there was only 2 water sources, they had hardly any addiction, because these rats they had different things to do and the excitement. And it was interesting for me to read that to read that research, because something that I've been saying for the since 2020, since I became a life coach, is I say over and over, make your life more interesting so food doesn't have such a center stage. And then in the last podcast, they talked about in Portugal, focusing how they help these people have deeper connections. And when they have that, then they have way less addictions. So having thought about that and looking at that, this concept, and having worked with hundreds of thousands of women in the last 4.5 years or so, we are all very smart. We are all very capable. But if we don't address the real issues, then nothing changes. And I just did a training in February or January that was excellent. And it talked about how I can give you recipes. I could give you workouts. We could even take your blood. We could do an analysis on your blood type and what kinds of foods you should be eating. We could actually do an analysis on what kind of body you have. And your body likes more protein, meat protein, or vegetable protein. Like, we have all the science. We could do all those kinds of things. But none of those things will matter unless you learn how to go into here first, and how to go into here. And in here, we're talking about the vagus nerve, which is our regulation nervous system. So we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is all about looking for danger. And that's our lower brain that's constantly scanning. Or we can be in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is always thinking about our thinking. And that's in our higher brain. So as humans, we're evolving our understanding and knowledge of how our brains and bodies work. We also understand that we're more neuroplastic, that we can actually change so much more than we thought we ever could. And so this is really good news. However, we are still approaching weight loss the way we did in the 80s, right? And so we are not updating the way we think about weight loss, and we're not keeping up. And that's my job. My job is to create this podcast, to go on Instagram, to write emails, to find women to say, hey, listen, it's not that you're not smart enough. It's not that you aren't clever enough. It's not that you aren't disciplined enough. It's that you don't have all the rules. And that is my job, is to help you with that. So I'm so glad you're here listening or watching. And so today I'm actually going to talk about some strategies because, it's one thing to know about it. And it's also good to know that the counting calories and tracking steps aren't necessarily everything you need to do. In fact, you don't really need to do it that much. But you do need to have some things to do. So when people would see me losing weight back in like 2019 and 2020, and they say, well, how are you losing all this weight? And I said, oh, I'm just using my brain. I'm losing weight with my brain. And they were so confused. And I would have been confused too. I'm like, no, just give me the checklist. And so we do need to have some form of checklist, but we also really need to have a solid foundation and understanding. And before I go into the rest of the podcast, I do want to share a win with one of my clients. And this client, it's been really interesting working with her because one of the things that she grew up with was she had a mom that would be doing errands, and her mom would be pretty resentful about doing errands, and so she would always go and get herself a treat. And so this client of mine, she just figured that's what you do. You just go and get yourself a treat when you're doing errands. And now she doesn't do them anymore. She doesn't need to. And if she does get herself a treat, it's something healthy. So if she goes and gets like a cool drink, it's a just bubbly, like there's no sugar, it's bubbly water. And so she's able to modify these unhealthy habits. And also she's able to say, my treat is that I have a car. My treat is that I have a body. My treat is that I live in a free country. Like she's able to realize like how many treats what truly is a treat and what's happening and how she's caring for her body. So I really like this is a simple win, but it's made such a difference for her. Not only is it helped her lose weight and keep it off, but it also helps her to be like the boss of her own life. She doesn't have to always be doing everything on autopilot. She can make a decision. What do I want? Okay. So, and then I'm just going to add just this because we're going to talk about strategies here. We're going to talk about, because the truth is, if you want to lose weight, you do have to be in a calorie deficit. Your body needs to access stored fat and use that stored fat. Okay. So that is a truth. So if we're eating 2,000 calories a day, then our body never gets the opportunity to have to go and dip into the storage. Okay. And so we do need to be mindful of our calories. And my work, talking about strategy. So I made myself a promise. I said, I am never going to count calories and track steps for me to lose weight. I'm just not going to do it. And I can do it for like a week or two to gather information, but that is not going to be how I'm going to lose it up. Because how you're going to lose the weight is how you're going to keep it off, right? It's just like with parenting or marriage or your job. If it's always constantly stressful and difficult, that's not very sustainable, right? You're not going to want to do that for very long. So people who get themselves in a marriage and don't use their words and don't communicate and don't, share things, they think, wow, I'm just going to get through this week. Instead of saying, this is really hard and I don't really like the way this is going. Can we make some changes? And taking more charge of that. So, All right. So when I say that you have to be in a calorie deficit, it actually means you don't have to be counting calories all the time. And so here are some of my strategies. So when I decided to lose the weight, I thought, okay, there are a lot of foods that that I can eat. So I said to myself, okay, there are so many vegetables. And then I just went online and I looked at all the different vegetables, and it just created a feeling of abundance. And then I'm like, I can eat lots of fruit. And then I went online and I saw all the different fruits. And when I'd go to the grocery store, I would go to the fruits and the vegetables, and I would look and see there are so many options here. Okay. And then I gave myself permission to look at, okay, I can eat meat. And then I was able to see all the different meat options and all the different ways of cooking meat. I could barbecue meat, I could braise meat, I could, stir fry it, I could slow cook it. Like, there are lots of meat and there's lots of options, and there's like different sauces and spices. And that felt really abundant to me. And then I said to myself, well, and I can have dairy. Like, I can have cottage cheese, and can have Greek yogurt, and I could have paneer, and I can have cheese. And I thought, I have so many options. Okay. So when I was able to just use that thinking of, I have so many options, there's so many things that I can eat, then it got me into an abundant mindset. So that's one really good strategy. The other thing that I did was I thought, I don't want to live a life where I never have flour and sugar. But I don't want to be at the mercy or whim of it. I definitely don't want to feed an addiction to it. So I would say to myself, if I want to have that sugar or flour, I just have to plan it 24 hours in advance. And then I created some strategies around, if I'm at an event and something looks really, really delicious, I could just take it home with me and I could eat it the next day. So that one was huge. Making my life more interesting. So when I would be tempted to go to the pantry, or I would wanting to get a treat. So even this is a very simple example, but I used to go to the dollar store and get myself like licorice all sorts. That would be my treat for doing all these errands and taking care of all these kids. And so, you know what I do now? I still can buy myself a treat, but it's more like a nice Sharpie marker or a really nice notebook. Those are treats. Or it can be, I can go to the grocery store and I can buy some really nice bubbly water. This is one of our newest favorites. It's called calamansi, citrus, and strawberry sparkling water. So yummy. And so I can just give myself that treat of making sure that I have delicious and healthy foods around me all the time. Another thing that I've done is I have a whole drawer full of herbal teas. And I also have a kettle up here in my studio, and because I really love hot water. And I also have cocoa and dandy blend, and I can make, so I don't have to just be drinking boring water. I can have all sorts of drinks. And I have these nice glass jars that keep my hands nice and warm. I also have fresh lemons and ginger in my fridge. So if I want to start my day off with fresh lemon and ginger, I can do that. I always prioritize grocery shopping, and even like kiwis. I'm really having this kiwi kick where I have 2 kiwis a day. Especially if you're having problems with bowel movements and you want to increase your fiber. And as we get older, we need that. So kiwi is a great way to increase fiber. And I always eat the kiwi with the skin on. So it's kind of an indulgence, but it's something that I prioritize for me. So when we say with water, we want to drink half of our body weight in ounces. And so learning how to create healthy water habits is super important. Um, and then another strategy that I think has been really helpful to a lot of my clients and myself like this is a huge one for me, is asking myself, taking that pause before and say, I'm in a situation and I'm like, I would normally I'd be grabbing for like chocolate or some sort of like peanut butter or chocolate chips or something to like, or even a piece of toast with honey. Like it'd be a way for me to kind of like, break the stress. So I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to go and get the peanut butter and banana sandwich. I don't have to make that anymore. I can just pause and say, okay, Dara, you're in a situation. What kind of wife do I want to be right now? What kind of mom do I want to be? What kind of daughter? What kind of citizen? What kind of business owner? What kind of human to myself do I want to be? So learning how to take that pause and then asking myself, okay, who do I want to be in this moment? So when I do that, it helps me not to have to go to the food all the time. Okay. So and then I also talk about self-compassion. And I'm going to be sharing a few more strategies throughout the month of February because the month of February, of course, we're thinking Valentine, Galentine's, all the lovey. But in the month of March, we're focusing in our membership. So in the membership, the month of March, we're focusing on how to overcome overwhelm and how to direct your sales. It's like the wind is like life is always happening, right? Life is always lifing. And so we can't control how windy it is or how much snow there is or how hot it is or how cold it is. My son's in Africa. He's learning all about how hot it is. I live on a very rainy place. Like, we can't control how often it rains, but we're working on how do we overcome that? How do we direct our own life? How do we react? And then also of like, how do we transform the chaos and calm? Okay. So we're really learning how to be the CEO of our own life. So I want you to join us. In fact, every month we have a new theme, and every month we have our consistent calls. So we have 3 calls a week, and we work through all the different troubles, all the different situations, everything that life throws us. And so when we learn how to work through all of that, we are no longer needing to turn to the food or to the over shopping or the over scrolling to avoid it. We can actually just face it head on without all the drama, and we can actually face it in a way that feels really good to us. So if you are ready for your own personal transformation, I invite you. There's 2 different things that you can do in this way. You can come to one of the webinars that's happening. You can just go to free class, darathomason.com/free class and register. You can also have a conversation with me. I have a few spots every week for free coaching. Go to darathomason.com/chat and I can give you some free help, and then we can have a conversation to see if it's a good fit. My program or coaching or therapy or whatever I think would probably be the best for you. And then or the third, if you're ready and you're just like, let's just go, you can just go to darathomason.com and join my membership. It's just $1,997, the lifetime membership, and it truly does change your life. So you can choose, but if you don't choose, what are the consequences you're going to have? So I'd love to help you. Take care, everyone. Bye. See you next week.